Joining me. It is incredibly dark and dull today, but I'm bringing out the sun and the heavens with this design. So I'm going to be doing a pendant with you. I'm using a lovely little jade. Sometimes we refer to them as donuts. This is actually called P. Well, it's pronounced B, and it's a pagan symbol originally, but used very much so in Chinese culture and tradition. So I'm going to be using 2 gauges of wire, some lovely size 8 seed beads, and I'm going to make a lovely design. I will show you them down on the mat that look like this. I've got 2 colorways for you. They're really straightforward and easy to do. And then you can do whatever you want in terms of making the bail. But I've used a technique that I've not done with you here before, which is going to be some wire macrame to make that bail. So if you're new to wire, please give this a go. I'm going to talk it through step by step. It's been a little while since I've done it, to be honest, and I've not had a spare one to practice with. So we'll go through the motions and the steps together. I'm going to take you over to the website now. I'm going to show you the wonderful website and our offers. We have got that Easter weekend offer on still as well, which I completely forgot about. So it's if you spend over £40, you can get 20% off with egg24 as the code. I'm hoping all is well and we're streaming where we should be. At the moment, I'm just seeing YouTube people in, so I don't know whether we've got an issue with Facebook again. I did check all of the settings this morning and everything appeared good to go, but it did last time as well. So I'll take you over to the website, and then hopefully those that need to find us can find us. Good morning to Rachel, who's in a wet barrow. It's not wet yet, but it looks like it's absolutely going to bucket it down. It's really dull and dark. Good morning to Tracy. Hello to Helen. Good morning to Jan, who's in a fair Sudbury, and she's hoping everyone's had a good weekend. I've had a really, really lovely weekend. And I'm ready for the working week. I feel rested. So over we go to the website, and I'll show you our lovely products for you today. So we are totallybeads.co.uk, and there will be a little banner that scrolls past here in a sec, which will be about that Easter offer. Today is the last day to get that offer. So spend £40 or more and get 20% off with egg24 in your codes in checkout. So hopefully that will pop up for you. I'll take you into the video tutorial section where you can learn to make lots of lovely things. Today is the Jayden Doughnut pendant. So if I click in here, you can see there's 2 lovely colorways for you today. So one's on the silver and one's on like a champagne gold wire. It might just be gold, I'm not sure. I'll have a little look for you. They are £5.99, and you're going to get everything you need to make a design just like this. So this is going to include your seed beads, both gauges of the wire, and that lovely jade donut as well. So we've got it in green jade, and we've also got it in a green and brown. So I'm using different coloured seed beads and wire just to bring out the tones in those beautiful little donuts, or haigus, or P as I refer to them as. So it's pronounced B, like a bumblebee, but it's spelt like pie, P-I, or it would be. So this is what you're getting. You're getting that gemstone donut. You're going to get your copper wire, which is coloured. It's in a 0.6 and a 1mm. So the 0.6 is a 22 gauge wire, and 1mm is 18 gauge wire if you work that way round. And we're using the Toho size 8 seed beads. If you want to have a little look at the products individually, you can see there I'm using those silver line milky light peridot, which really goes lovely with that green jade, and that's going to be on the silver. So that one is £5.99, or if you prefer this colorway instead, everything again is in the kit is the same. It's just different color wire and seed beads. So the seed beads I'm using here is like a metallic flame, and your gemstone donuts, they are 22mm in size, and these ones are like a green and beautiful kind of brown tone to them. So I'll talk to you a little bit about the bee and that shape and its kind of wonders, but they are £5.99 for you today. If you want to play along with us, you can get your hands on the kits on the website, and you can also get that offer if you've got lots of other goodies in your basket as well. So I'll stop sharing and I'll see. Yeah, it's just looking like YouTube again, isn't it? Good morning to Mina. She says she can't find me on Facebook again. Yolanda says good morning from Michigan. It's about 3 minutes past 5 in the morning. Hope you've had a good weekend. Star saying good morning to everybody. And Elizabeth's in as well, and she's saying no Facebook again. I really don't know why. As I say, I've checked all the settings. You can find us on YouTube, so we are Totally Beads on YouTube. You can also find me on Natalie Patton Jewellery on YouTube. I'll share this to my Facebook page. I'll share it in the Handmade Facebook page as well, and you can always catch us back on the website. When we've finished, it will go live and you'll be able to find us through there as well. Judith saying good morning. The sun's out here in West Lothian after 50 mile per hour winds this weekend. It's been extremely windy. I hope everybody's okay, and I hope anyone watching in Scotland is safe and well as well. Okay, I'm going to take you down on the mat very quickly because it will take me a little while to put these together. As I say, I've not got one. I can say here's one I've made earlier. Just going to position my camera and you can see these lovely little pendants that we've got. So they're not too large in size. You could make this veil as large as you wanted to. So obviously jade is a very loved gemstone, particularly in China. It's deemed to have like supernatural powers and was a very special, included in lots of different carvings and symbols. So, excuse me, the bee is it's pagan, I think, originally, but it's also, excuse me, I've got a tickle in my throat. Let me have a sip of my coffee. Excuse me. But it's been one of the longest types of carved kind of shapes within their culture. It's meant to represent the heaven and the sun. So they used to use these lovely bee carvings. They were found in lots of tombs of emperors. They used to be positioned under the head and also adorn lots of decorative reasons as well. So it's only really become jewellery in the last few hundred years, and it all determines the size of this hole in the centre, really. If it's a much larger hole in the centre, then it's usually referred to as an annular ring or a hololith, but it's quite an easy cut, so it was obviously very popular and quite practical. But just because it's an easy cut doesn't mean these people that were carving these were not absolute experts in their fields. They were used by to represent wealth and things like that. So the Chinese believe that the shape of heaven is a disc shape, and that is why this is so popular. So what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be doing this design, but you can do all sorts of things with it. You could just thread that through a chain if you wanted to, and you could wear that as is. You could make a little veil for it. I've done lots of different designs on Totally Beads for donut type pendant, so you can have a little look at lots of different ones of those if you want. But I'd usually use a thinner weaving wire. At the moment, as I say, I'm using a 0.6 and a 1mm. So the 1mm wire, which is your 18 gauge, is going to be used as the main frame, and the 0.6 or the 22 gauge is going to be used to kind of make these kind of wraps and also that weave on the veil. You could do all sorts of different designs. This one, I suppose, is wearable both ways, but this is the design I'm going to show you today because it is super easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose which colourway. Now, I've put the green and the brown with the gold, but in terms of what wire I've got to hand today, I am going to do it in the silver. But I might do a mix of the Toho seed beads with it and see how that looks. So I'm using the size 8 seed beads. We've got these gorgeous coloured ones here, if I can hold them up. So you can see they go really gorgeous with the green tones in that donut. And then these ones, I think, really bring out the kind of gold tone or bronze in that brown colourway. Camille's saying she loves a bit of jade. Is my sound okay? Was it me, or has my sound gone funny? I'm hoping everything's working today. We've got gremlins in the system again. Okay, so what I'm going to start off with is my 1mm wire, or my 18 gauge, and I'm going to cut about 26 centimetres of that. Now, this has just been the last of what's on my reel, so it's a little bit bent. So I have tried to straighten it out with my fingers or with my nylon coated pliers, but it doesn't matter. If it's got a curve in it, we're going to curve it around the shape of that donut anyway, so don't worry too much. So I've cut 26 centimetres of that, which in inches is about 10.5 inches. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the end of my 1mm wire, and I'm going to put a bend in it at 9 centimetres, which is about 3 3/4 inches. And I'm just going to put a little bend. Do it with your fingers, you could do it with your tools. So I've got that kind of right angled shape. And now I'm going to take my 0.6mm wire. Now, usually when I'm wrapping a weaving wire, I will always leave it attached to my reel, so I can, I don't have to measure it out as such. This I am going to measure out because I want to be able to bring that through the centre in the hole there. So I'm going to cut myself about 100 centimetres of the 0.6. So that would be 30, 60, and of course I'd rather have it a little bit longer just in case. But it can be a little bit tricky to work with to begin with because it's such a long length of wire. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my wire where that bend is, and I'm just going to attach on the 0.6 to where that bend is. So I'm going to leave myself a little tail, and I'm going to place it over the top, bring it round, and I'm going to wrap that on about 3 times. Now, this is quite sturdy wire to be using as like a weaving wire, but it is nice and soft enough to kind of get those weaves, or those wraps rather, nice and tight. I can now take off that little tail end. So my wire is coming down over the front. I'm just going to trim off that little tail. So I'm taking my flush cutters and trimming, and then with my chain nose or needle nose pliers, I'm just going to tuck in and make sure that's nice and flush and close to the top of that bend. Good morning, Debbie. Apparently my sound's a little bit echoing. I hope everything's okay. If I mute that one, does that make any difference? So now I'm going to start threading on some of my seed beads. Now you might find it's easier to add them all on and then pop a little bend in the end, or you might just want to add a few at a time. I'll try and alternate them. Seeing as I'm using a different colour wire, I will put on different colours of my seed beads. But I'm using the size 8s, and that is going to fit nicely just over that 1mm or 18 gauge wire. Thank you so much. Sorry, I thought I'd have fixed things like that. So hopefully my sound's okay for you now. So these are the Jayden Gemstone Doughnut pendants. We've got these beautiful little donuts or B-shaped stones. I'm using 2 gauges of wire, my 1mm and my 0.6, so 18 and a 22 gauge. I cut about 26 centimetres of the 18 gauge or 1mm wire, and I'm using about 100 centimetres so far of the 0.6. So I'm just going to thread on a few at a time because they are likely to fall off. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to position my my pendant. Now, depending on how you make these, if you are going to use something like this design, you can give that a spin and that can move and it is fixed. This one is also movable, but this isn't. Once that's in place, that's in place. So have a little look how you would like to position your donut or your pendant. What you could do is you could, if you wanted to multi-buy the kits, you could use one colour of seed beads around one side and then the others around the other. But I'm just going to position mine like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 0.6mm wire, and it is quite tricky, as I say, to start off with because it's quite long. But I'm going to take that length and I'm going to bring it roughly through the middle. So don't worry if it moves to begin with. There you go, there's the seed beads already falling off. I'm just going to position that through the middle. Now, if you want to take your first seed bead up, you're just going to position that up next to those wraps. And it will move around to begin with, but as we do more, it's going to get longer. So I'm bringing that wire through the hole in the middle, and then I'm going to position it up against that last seed bead. And I'm just going to get it on the outside edge. Now, what I want to do is I want to keep this wire nice and straight, and I want it straight on the back as well. And then I'm just going to slide that next seed bead up. Sometimes what I like to do is I like to bring it over my thumb. So I hold my thumb down against the stone. And then as I bring that wire through the middle, I'm just going to keep an eye on it to make sure the wire don't bend and it doesn't kink and it's nice and straight. And then I can move my thumb out the way and pull it nice and taut. So I want those wires sitting nice and straight, and I also want them sitting straight at the back as well, so they're not crossing over and just creating those little lines. I'm now going to make sure that seed bead, that next seed bead, is pushed right up before I bring this wire over again. So it's going over the front of the stone, through the middle, and back out the other side. And I'm just going to do it gradually and slowly, just to ensure that it's nice and straight. So I'm bringing it over my thumb, moving my thumb out the way, and bringing it nice and tight. So I would like my seed beads to frame the outside of my donut or my bee. It can move slightly to the front if you prefer it like this. So you can see here, they're sitting along the outside edge, whereas this one is sitting a little bit more to the side and framing it. And it looks like this on the back. So I'm keeping those wires nice and straight. Each time I do a rotation, I'm going to push up that next seed bead. Through the hole in the center, doing it nice and gradually, nice and slowly, just to make sure it's not kinking. I'm bringing it over my thumb, moving my thumb down, and just giving it a little gentle pull so it's nice and tight. And you'll see now it's starting to hold its shape, and this wire, this 1mm wire, is stopping moving quite as much. Bringing that next seed bead up. So there will be a seed bead in between each rotation. And I'm just going to continue to do that all the way around my stone. So I'm taking it nice and slowly, pulling that wire nice and taut. If I do get any kinks in my wire, what I can do is I can take my pliers and very gently, just using the side, I can just straighten it out if there's any kinks and bends. I'm also going to keep having a little look at the back and making sure they're not crossing over anywhere. And you will be able to keep those kind of wraps even because you're just using the width of that 0.8, that size 8 seed bead. So adding a few more seed beads on. You might want to just add 2 on at a time. You might want to do a few if you can keep them on your 1mm wire. Just make sure there's only one in between each one, so it's nice and neat and even. Bringing it back through the center, just holding it in place between my finger and my thumb, guiding that wire through the center of the hole. And sometimes I'll smooth this 0.6 out as well, so I can see there's a couple of little kinks starting to form. So I'll just gently straighten it with my pliers. And then I'm going to start creating that curve with that 1mm wire, just to create that shape so it's fitting lovely around the outside of the pendant. Some extra seed beads to go on, so I'm just sliding them on to the 1mm wire. Bringing it through the center. Go very gently at this point because you'll see it wants to cross. So I'll position my thumb down just to prevent it getting any kinks in it. Pulling it nice and taut and pushing it flat against the donut. Bringing it back around. So I'm laying it in the position roughly where I want to. Again, if I can see any little bends in it, then I'm just going to give it a gentle little kind of pinch with my wire. And I'm going to start to kind of rotate round. So whatever angle is easier for you to work with. You can see there it's wanting to create that loop. So I'm just twisting it into place. The wire's got a little bit of memory in it, so it can remember whereabout you've brought it round to kind of lay it flat, created that almost bend in it here. Again, just looking at the back, making sure that there's nothing crossing over. I've only got 1 seed bead in between each wrap, so they're all sitting nice and even. And it gets a lot easier, obviously, the less wire of that 0.6 that you have. Pushing it in place, making sure I'm happy where it's laying before I bring the next one over. Now, usually I'd be like, here's one I've made earlier, but I haven't got one I've made earlier. So I'm going to do this together with you. Checking it's not crossing over in the center. Just pulling that with my finger so it's nice and straight and laying neat at the back. That wire will then start to curve around the stone. I'm going to add on a couple more of my seed beads. I have done this where I've added them all on, and depending on not necessarily the size of your donut, obviously if you've got a different donut you're working with, then it will require a different amount of wire and a different amount of seed beads. If you're using the 1mm, I'd always go for the size 8 seed beads because, as I say, they're going to slide onto the wire really easily. But you might find you use 25 of the seed beads, you might use 27. I suppose it does depend on how tight those wraps are really. Bringing it round, just using my thumb to kind of guide it. I want that wire to sit really close to that seed bead. The next seed bead comes down and pushes it into place. Bring the next one over. Check on the back that you're happy with how that's positioned, because you could make this kind of reversible so you could wear it each way. Trish says, good morning, it looks like a lovely make. Thank you so much for joining me. We are doing the Jayden Gemstone Doughnut bee pendant today. But we're having a few issues as always, and I'm only on YouTube. I'm going to push that next one down. Again, if there's a slight kink in the wire, I'm just going to gently press it. I don't want to be too harsh with that wire. But what's lovely about this wire is it is kind of colour-coated, colour remain. So it's copper, so it's nice and soft and malleable to use. But it's got this colour coating on it, which means it keeps that colour and it doesn't tarnish too quickly. Mina says, Natalie, thank you for your fab tutorials. I've made the Mobius necklace with 6mm pearls yesterday for a wedding fair, and I need to make a matching bracelet and earrings and found more tutorials. Well, that's what we're here for. I'm really glad, Mina, that your sales are booming by the sound of it. Good morning to Joanne. She says, finally found where I can interact with the chat. Facebook's definitely not working again. Love these stones and the colours that go with it. Looks like we're in for a thunderstorm later on. Yeah, I think so too. It's been a little bit warmer, and it's usually got to be a little bit warmer before the thunder. I've not done loads of colourways with these because it is these jade donuts that I just wanted to use, and they're the star of the show. So the wire and the seed beads are just a little bit of an embellishment. So again, I'm curving that 1mm round just so it's going to create the right tension. I mean, if you wanted to, you could just wrap half of it and keep half of it plain, but I think it creates a lovely shape. And I think it looks more complicated than it is. So as I say, if you are new to wire, do give this a go. If it goes horribly wrong and you really don't like it, you could just cut your wire off. You can then reuse your seed beads, and you've got your pendant still that you could do, you know, something else with it. So I do think it's definitely worth giving this design a go. And as I say, there's lots of other designs if you just have a little look. Most of them will be on my tutorials. So if you go onto my YouTube, there's a playlist called Wire Makes, and lots of other donuts would be in there. Or you could search on the Totally Beads website. If you type in donut, it will come up as well. So I'm just adding the next one on. Checking the back that I'm happy, and you can see it's all kind of held in place now. This 1mm wire isn't really moving anywhere now, keeping those lines nice and straight. They are, the space in the middle is going to get a little bit tighter inside that hole, so they are going to want to start to kind of sit down more snugly and cross. So I'm just sliding it up with my nail or my thumb and squishing it down. You see, it's much easier to continue to use as the wire gets shorter. Still a nice long length, but it's not flailing around as much now. Adding a few more seed beads on. So I say I have done it before where I've added all my seed beads on first, but I found I've had to put a bend in the end of the 1mm wire to stop them falling off. So it's probably just easier to add a couple on as you go. And obviously the more you've got on, the more they all want to slip down. If you need to, you can just unwrap that wire. So if I'd noticed, I had put 2 seed beads on, I could just reverse what I've done to kind of slide it back off. So bringing it through the middle. Now they're wanting to cross here. So I'm just going to put my finger in the way. Make sure it's down tight to the stone. So sometimes I might give it a little push to lay it flat. And I can straighten out any kinks in the wire before I bring it through the hole. And your size 8 seed beads are all going to be fairly uniform in size. Sometimes when you're using kind of craft seed beads, they can really vary in size. But as these are all fairly uniform, you'll find that those kind of weaves are all pretty much the same distance and the same space. So as I say, it's going to get tighter in the middle because I'm wrapping all the way around the donut. You will find that the wires want to sit much closer to each other because they're all fighting for space in the centre there. But that's okay, just keep it straight as long as they're straight going into the centre. It will look nice and neat. It's often nice to use a seed bead as well because that helps you with the kind of tension, because that little space is doing all the work. Adding on a few more seed beads. You can see now these wires are starting to run kind of parallel towards each other. I am going to finish this when I get close to this point, and then we can start creating the bail. So bring in that wire over the top towards the centre, through the hole in the centre, bringing it nice and slowly to prevent any twisting. Just slide those seed beads up a little bit for now, and then the next one's going to slide into place. Checking the back, so I've crossed that one over there because I didn't check it. So I'm just going to reposition it with my thumb and my finger, and I can move them about if need be. Checking that one's coming out nice and flat. In between the seed bead. Bringing it through. And the next seed bead coming down. Just repositioning. Really doesn't matter, but I think it looks nice if those wires are fairly straight. I think I'm going to add one more seed bead on. Just going to gauge it really by eye. But I also think it'd be nice to create that continuous kind of colour. So usually if you're using these designs in your kit, you're going to have all one colour seed bead. But because I've mixed it up, I'd like the bronzy gold one to sit next to the kind of turquoisey coloured green. Okay, so now I've got my last seed bead on. I'm going to position that wire also into a bend. So I want them to sit parallel next to each other because that is going to be my bail. Jan's asking, how many donuts do you get if bought separately? I think, Jan, they are individual. So if I have a little look, if you head onto the website, you get, yeah, I think it's just the one. So it's 22 millimeters in size. It's 5.5 millimeters in thickness, and the hole is 4 millimeters in the center of it. And you could thread it on with like a leather cord or whatever you fancy. But you just get one, and they are £3.50. So I do think it's definitely worth paying £5.99 for the kit, because that obviously includes all of your seed beads and all of the wire as well that you need. So now I've finished adding my seed beads on, I'm just going to wrap around that 1 millimeter wire again with the 0.6. So it's 3 little wraps, so it's kind of matching the other side. I'm going to cut it off and tuck in by flattening down any of the ends. And then I'm just going to straighten my wires up. So if you wanted to now, you could do any kind of weave on that bail. You could use a 0.4 or 0.3 weaving wire, and you could wrap around doing any two kind of wire weave you wanted to. You could bend them out into kind of that kind of triangle shape, and you could do a figure of 8 weave with them. You could wrap 2 around the bottom, 2 around both. You could do whatever you felt comfortable with. If you didn't want to do any more weaving, you could just wrap these round into a bail and secure them with the tail ends of that 1 millimeter wire, and you could just create kind of a little bail that way. There's lots of different things you could do. But what I would like to do, let's move these seed beads out the way because I've finished with those for now. I'm going to create a bail like this. Now this is looks quite intricately woven, and it's really not. It is macrame, and I'm just doing a general square knot, but with wire instead of cord. So if you've never done macrame before, please go and have a little look at some of the tutorials that we've done and do it, have a little practice with the cord first, though you might find actually doing it with the wire is easier. It's entirely up to you. So I've got my macrame board. It isn't a necessity, but I do feel it helps, and I'm going to use these 2 wires coming off the bottom. I'm going to give that a little trim actually, just so they're both particularly even. I'm going to use these as what I'd refer to as my lazy cord, or my holding cords. So I'm just going to position a piece of scrap wire or thread through the hole in the bee or the donut, just to kind of anchor that on to hold it in place. And I'm going to take some more of my 0.6 wire 22 gauge. So you only need the 2 gauges of wire in this. Jan says she loves wire macrame. I did it at Christmas. We did I did some earrings and like little connectors and stuff, but I've never done it on a live before, so I thought this might be the perfect opportunity. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut off, I'm probably going to use for the 0.6, I'm probably going to use about 50 centimeters of this. So I'm just going to straighten it out a little bit with my fingers, and I'm going to cut about 50 centimeters of my 0.6 wire. You will get enough in your kit to do all of this. So I've got these 2 kind of flailing around a little bit. You could, if you wanted to, make this wire longer. So I might actually turn my board round because I don't need the full length of the board. So if you wanted to, you could pinch those. If I give them a little bend, I could put those holding cords into my board, just like I would do with, if I was using rat tail, and a little bit of thread or whatever you want. You could even use a T-pin just to hold into the centre. Have we got a little bit of focus on that? Is that okay? It's looking a little blurry, isn't it? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the two ends of my 50 centimetres of the 0.6 and I'm going to bring them up together like so, just so I can find a rough centre point in my wire. And I'm going to position that underneath. I think I'm going to struggle to get these lengths of underneath the camera. I'm going to position where that bend was there. That's roughly the centre. And I'm just going to bring it over just like I would with my working cords. It will be a little bit tricky just to first get that first one on, and then it works exactly the same. So I'm creating what would be kind of my P shape. So the working wire, rather than the working cord, is going underneath both of those 1mm bail wires, and it's coming over the top. So for me, I always tend to start on my left. With any type of macrame, you will find you've got kind of preference of which side you work first when you're doing a square knot. So do whatever is most comfortable for you. I'm now taking this side of the wire, which is the right side, and it's going to come over the top and underneath both the holding wires and this little loop. So just bring it through the little loop as usual, and then I'm just going to gently pull and that's going to create my first loop on this side. Then I'm going to push that up really close to the top of the bail or the top of my pendant, and then I'm going to bring it over the other side. Once you've done that first one, it gets much easier. So now I'm creating my P shape. So you tend to have your P's or your Q's, or sometimes you have your fours. And it's just talking about the shape that we're creating here. So I've got this P shape with the right side. I'm taking the left side wire. It's going to go over the top and coming underneath the holding wires and out through this little space that I've created. And then I'm just going to draw them down slowly together. So you can see I'm now making that kind of circular loop and putting my thumbs just on the kind of working wire, and with my fingers I'm just pulling it. And depending on how taut you pull will create this lovely weave in the bail. It could be really tightly woven like so, or you can make it looser depending on how taut you pull them. Now, if I ever forget which side I'm working on, it works exactly the same as it would do with a cord. So I'm checking which wire is coming over the top. So if I can hold that up, you can see this wire is making a little loop and it's coming over the top. So that's the side I'm working off now. So that's one square knot. And I'm just going to continue to do my square knots. I'll probably do about 3 centimetres or 1.5 inches of this. But again, it depends on the length that you want your bail. So this time I've created my Q shape by bringing that wire over the top. The right hand side wire is coming over the top of the left to go in underneath the holding wires, which is the 1mm. It's coming back through the loop at the top, and a little gentle pull. And you'll notice this is starting to slip. That's fine. I'm just going to push it back up again. When I've finished it, will all kind of hold itself in place. Now you can still use your macrame board just like you would with the cord. So if I wanted to stop them flailing around, I've got, you'll see here, those little kind of slotted edges. I can position my wire in there if I need to. So now I've done half a knot there, and my loop's coming over. So I'm going to work on the right side, creating that letter P. And what's good about using the wire is it's going to hold its shape, that I can talk to you about it. Usually when I'm doing cord, I'm like, and it's in this position, and then obviously there's movement in the cord, it's slippy. And with the wire, it again retains its shape. You don't have to be too forceful with it at all. And it makes it, once you've secured that first that first half square knot, then you'll find that your wires just behave themselves, because they're going to stay in the position that you've put them in. Joanne says, wire macrame, what a gorgeous idea. It's really fun to do. As I say, if you've not done macrame before, then I would suggest you try it with the cords first. But you might find that the wire is just easier to use, to be honest. So again, creating those P's and Q's, doing exactly the same technique, just swapping sides. I'm going nice and slow, so I'm making like a large circle, and smaller and smaller and smaller again. So I'm just putting the tension evenly on both ends of those wires when I pull it. And as I pull it, I'm also running it through my fingers, and that's just working out any kinks that may occur. Bringing the next one over, underneath and out through that loop. And I'm just going to keep pulling, making sure that they're kind of the same size, these loops, getting the tension fairly even in them. You could probably do a spiral knot with this as well, but I think it'd be a little bit more tricky. And obviously for the bail, I want it to sit flat, so my chain or my cord or whatever I'm using in is going to fit nicely. And also the joy of doing wire macrame is I don't have to glue or singe any of the edges of the cord to kind of fix it. You know, sometimes I do it with glue or I do it with heat, like a thread zapper. That's not needed. So you can always see I'm getting that little kink, but as I pull it straight and pull it through, it's just flatten it out. So I'm just going to continue to do this. I've cut, as I say, about 50 centimetres of the 0.6 here. You can do this for as long as you want that bail to be. So you can make that bail as wide as you need. So if you want to do like a beaded chain through it, you could do it really large. If you just wanted to slip a chain through it and wear it that way, you could do whatever you want. I think I've done 2 on the same side there, which is why it's starting to bend, but I'm sure we'll be fine. Again, the good thing about using the wire is you can put it in the position that you want it to be. So bringing it over, I'm going to keep going until I've got my desired length. You can as well, if you want to, come in with your nylon coated pliers and kind of give it a little swish and press down. So I've got so far about 2 centimetres. I'm going to make it ever so slightly longer, so I'm going to do a few more. Cool. So I'm bringing one side over. The other side needs to go over the top of the wire you've brought over, underneath and through the loop that you've created. And pull those wires down into place. Then swap sides, bringing that wire over, the top of the holding wires, the left side coming over the top, underneath and through the hole in the middle. Gently pull. If you do have a macrame board, you can just use the squares on your board and say, I'm going to wrap enough for kind of 3 squares or however the length you want to do it. As I say, I've made my bails about 3 centimeters, like 1.5 inches. So let's see how I've got here. A few more. Bringing over the top, underneath, back out through the hole in the middle. And you can take your time on this. I'm trying to make sure that, I'm fitting this in an hour. But you take your time, you'll be able to make this beautifully neat and really lovely. So I'm completing this last square knot, and I'm pulling my wires nice and taut. Judith says, I really like what you create doing wire macrame, keep meaning to try it. Joanne says it's starting to look like you've weaved lace onto the bale. It makes it look really intricate and detailed, doesn't it? Like if you don't like doing figure of eights or weaving or anything like that, just do macrame. So you'll see now I've got finished with my board. I've got this lovely kind of pattern running down the middle. It's looking like this on one side, so that wire is a little bit crossed. This is going to be the front. So I'm quite happy with the positioning of everything. I'm now going to splay the 1mm wire out, and I'm just going to use the 0.6 to just wrap around, and this is how I'm going to secure my ends. So I say no glue, no like heat, I'm just going to wrap around 3 times and trim off. And again, if you wanted to, you could keep that on if you wanted to add some kind of more decorative swirls. But where that wire is coming out, I'm just bringing it round and just wrapping it with my fingers, nice and soft, so easy to do. Trimming off the excess and then tucking down. So I have this shape now. Again, if you want to, you can pop a little bit of pressure with your nylon pliers to flatten out the weave if you want to. I'm now going to bend it slightly forwards, and I'm going to create the bail. So you can use, you could use a pen, you could use your brown nose pliers, you could use your finger, you could use your bail step pliers, whatever you want to do. I'm going to find the size that I would like it. I'm just going to start creating that bend. I tend to prefer to do it with my fingers, to be honest. And what I want to do is I want to bend it so where those weaves or those little wraps at the back meet, I'm just going to be able to push that in, and I've created that bail shape. And now to secure it in place, I'm going to use the tail ends of that 1mm wire. So I'm going to bring it from the back, it was splayed out, and I'm going to, just with my fingers, you can use your tools as well, I'm going to wrap one across the top and all the way around the back. And then with the other, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to bring it forward, wrapping it round, bringing it forward again. So I've got those wraps, that's now secured that bail in place. If you want to neaten it up a little bit, you can use your tools just to compress them down so it's nice and neat. I want to make sure my bail is sitting at the top of my pendant and it's looking like it's sitting in the middle. And then I'm just going to add some decorative swirls. You could cut off if you wanted to, so you could bring it round and you could just trim. Just want to tighten that up a little bit. Or you could do some swirls and curls like I've done on these, which I think look quite nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the one closer to the bottom and I'm just going to put a little curve in there. I'm not going to need this wire to be so long. I'm going to bring that one up and that's going to go in the opposite direction. So as I don't need it to be so long, I'm going to give it a little trim with my cutters, and I'm going to take my round nose pliers and I'm going to start to give it a little curl. Now, my tip for getting the perfect curl with the round nose is to trim off the teeniest tiny bit here, which has been quite straight. So I'm just going to trim off maybe about 1 millimetre. I'm going to come back in with the round nose. I'm going to lift it up away from the stone at the moment. So put my round nose back in and I'm going to just curl it in on itself. I want to make sure that that curl is fully inside. I don't want this to be able to catch on anything. Now I'm going to hold my other pliers, so maybe my chain nose or something, over the top of that curl, and that's going to create a spiral that's going to go all the way around. You can do it with your fingers as well if that's easier for you. And I'm just going to create a little bit of a swirl until I've got it so I can position it flat against my stone where I want that to be. And then I'm going to do the same with the top one. You could do whatever you want. You can make swirls, curls, twirls, whatever. I'm going to try and see. I don't think I'm going to need that all. So again, I'm going to trim off a little bit. I'm going to start my curl off. So I'm going to hold my round nose pliers right up to the very end, so it's nice and flush. Just twisting with my wrist to get that to curve in. Tiny little flat bit there. I'm going to trim off. I'm covering it with my finger and my thumb so nothing's firing off, and keeping myself safe. Created that little curl, and you can continue that spiral with the round nose, but what you often find is it tends to curl in on itself. So you might want to swap over to the chain nose or flat nose pliers. When I'm happy with the size and the positioning, I'm again just going to come in with my fingers and just squish that down. These don't need, I think, securing with any weaving wire. As long as that curve is fully inside of itself, you've created something nice and secure. I want that to be a little bit more flush. So I'm just going to tighten that up, and again, get it in the position that I want. And I have my pendant done and dusted. So that's how it looks when I've used both of the seed beads. You are covering a lot of that beautiful jade, but I think just having the colours shine through. Again, I've held it fairly close to the side, so I've got this position so it's kind of upright. You can position your seed beads like this along the edge, rather than, just on the kind of cusp of the edge. And they are like roughly the same size. It just makes it look a little bit wider because they're on the outer edge. So we've got two lovely colours for you today. They are called the Jayden Doughnut pendants. They are £5.99. You can choose from the silver colourway with the green jade gemstone doughnut, and they are with the silver line milky peridot seed beads, which are size 8. Or if you prefer, you can use the gorgeous kind of green browny bronze colourway that is with the copper plated gold wire, and you've got the like metallic flame size 8 seed beads there as well. They're both £5.99, and we do have the offer on for today only, the last day of our Easter offer. If you pop egg EGG24 into the basket at checkout, if you've spent over £40, you will get 20% off. I hope you like them. I hope they're something that you think I'd like to give them a go. If, of course, you've got any questions and you think it's not making sense to me, or you need me to run through anything again, please drop me a comment. I'll always do my very best to answer. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll always go back through Totally Beads to find the comments. But if you comment directly on Natalie Pattern Jewellery, I'll get a notification, so I won't leave you hanging. Yolanda says, have a blessed week, and she's going to go start working. Jan says, it looks beautiful. Looks harder than it actually is. Going to try it. It's really, really straightforward. Have a little practice, maybe have a little practice of the macrame wire first. But again, you can do any veil with this that you like. Star says, lovely make. Thank you. Mina says, thank you for another fab tutorial. You're all very, very welcome, and bang on time. I hope you have a really lovely week. I'm going to be back with you on Friday. What am I making on Friday? Necklaces, I think, with just lovely bead strung hematite necklaces. I think that's what I'm doing. Jan says, lovely donut. I look forward to giving it a go. Been having a few issues with my site, but hopefully now on the mend. She's working out an ombre pearl necklace from one of your tutorials. Oh, lovely. I've got another one coming up soon, Joanne. I think it'll be in May. I'm looking at using some lovely shell pearls, I think, and I'm going to do kind of like an ombre mix. So I'd love to see what you make. If you could share your makes with me. We've got a Totally Beads handmade group, and I'd love to see what hopefully we've inspired you to do. So have a lovely week, everybody, and I will see you very soon. Take care.